You can't play great golf unless your body is doing 3 really key things in the golf swing. And in my experience coaching, many of the golfers that struggle are missing 1 or 2 of these really key elements. And that was certainly the case for a recent lesson of mine, Owain. He had a great golf swing, really, really good, but he was missing 1 of these 3 really key movements. As soon as we changed that, his performance just went like that. He started to strike it better, hit it more consistently. So what are the 3 movements? Well, we're going to start off with turn. So I'm sure you can all appreciate that in a golf swing we have to turn, we have to rotate our body. We turn away from the target and we turn towards the target. However, it's not that simple because we have to turn on an angle. So how do we turn on a tilted angle? Well, that has to be through your knees, through your hips and through your shoulders. So here's the first little exercise I want you to do to really kind of feel and get a sense of what that's like at the end of your backswing. You're going to tee a ball up. We are going to hit this golf ball in a moment. Take the club, pop it across your shoulders. I want you to just stand perfectly upright this way. And I just want you to get comfortable making a turn. So I'm going to rotate and the grip end of my golf club is going to start to point towards you as you're looking it through that camera. This is a turn. You can see that my shoulders are turning through around about 90 degrees. Notice I've also got some hip turn and I've also got some turn in my knees. My lower body basically needs to turn to allow my upper body to move into this position. So this is number 1, we're going to turn. And then number 2 is with our whole body, we're going to tip over towards the golf ball. Now, the golf club itself will never point down towards the ball. It's not on that steep of an angle. But what you can see here is I've now got angle through my shoulders, I've got angle through my hips, and I've got a little bit of angle through my knees. And from my viewpoint, the end of my grip here is pretty much over the golf ball. Now, I know it won't look like that from where you're viewing it, but if you do this exercise and you've got around about, you can see, a grip length outside of my lead shoulder. When I make this movement, there's my turn and add my tilt, I start to see that grip pretty much on top of that golf ball. And you can do that. You can do that at home, in the office, wherever you're kind of watching this now. And I'd love you to actually stand up and try and do it if you've got a golf club handy. And the beauty of that little exercise is that within a few seconds, a few rehearsals, you can start to feel what a perfect body position is at the top, where you've got tilt and you've got turn. So how are you actually going to hit a golf ball? Well, look, this isn't easy. This is a tricky little drill, but I'd love you to go ahead and practice it. There's a reason why I've got this ball teed up. I want to take my setup so I can gauge my sort of distance from the ball and make sure my relationship is correct. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up and I'm just going to put the club onto my trail shoulder. Okay, really, really simple. I've got a nice light grip pressure. You can see that my arms are pretty flexed. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to add in my turn that we did. I'm going to add in my tilt. There's my body position, and I'm simply going to put the club into some sort of position at the top, and then I can just go ahead and swing through. And suddenly, I'm able to get my golf club to line up with the ball. Not because I massively rerouted the club, but because I took my body and I put it on an angle which was representative of where that ball was. So that was a pretty terrible strike. Went pretty high, not very far, and actually kind of landed the club a little bit before the golf ball, so a little bit of a divot, but didn't feel compressed. So why was that not a good shot? Well, I was missing one of those elements. What was I missing? I was missing the shift. Okay, there has to be some lateral movement in your golf swing, especially when we're talking with the irons. You can get away with it a little bit more with a driver, we don't necessarily need as much. But let's look at why that's the case and just why you need that, why it's so important, and then I'm going to give you a really simple drill to practice it. So if I took a setup here, when I address the golf ball, I'm basically setting a low point of my golf swing, okay? My low point is going to be pretty much middle of my heels. Now that will depend a little bit on how you set yourself up, where your hands are, but effectively it's going to be pretty much middle of your heels. But we all know that if you want to hit good quality iron shots that are well struck, you have to hit ball, then turf. You have to have that descending blow. So the club has to be bottoming out target side of the ball. How do we do that? Well, there's a couple of things. Rotation is one of them, but we have to have some lateral shift. Okay, and if you watch any great player and you look at their hips in the downswing, you will see them shifting laterally towards the target. What that does is it shifts that low point and allows you to hit ball, turf, get the club going into the ground and get that really compressed feeling. So I want to make it really simple. I want to give you a really simple exercise that you can do. Hopefully you're all going to have a towel or something that's quite similar. Now I've just folded this over a couple of times and I'm going to place it behind the golf ball. For my towel, which I folded over a couple of times, I want it maybe 1 1/2, 1 to 3/4 lengths of my 7-iron behind the golf ball. Now, if I took a setup and I kept my hips in this position without any lateral shift, if I wanted to hit a shot, I'm pretty much always going to be colliding with that towel. Now, it's not going to stop my golf club, but if I was to do that, it's certainly going to disturb the towel or move the towel, and I'm going to get that feedback. What I would love you to do, and absolutely, let's start without a golf ball. Let's start with, just getting comfortable with the movement first. I really want you to learn how, from here, a bump across the target with your hips, a lateral shift, allows you to land the club consistently into the ground, but always missing the towel. Notice how when I do this, my head's not really moving. Okay, it's not a lateral shift with a whole body, because that can cause you to get a little bit steep with the hands, a little bit steep with the club shaft, and start to see your path move to the left. But a shift in that midsection allows you to land the club in the same place every time, and that place is where it needs to be relative to the ball. Now you can see the speed I was doing those at, pretty slow speed. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that with a ball, and let's see if we can do it at the same speed. I've got my towel behind as my reference, little backswing, add in my shift, and guess what? The strikes are perfect. So how I shift in the downswing is directly related to how well you can strike it, where your low point is. And once you've done that a couple of times, you can do two things. You can build up the speed. Let's just make sure my setup is good. So this time I'm just going to go in a little quicker, still going to shift. And again, miss the towel. You can see a big divot there, but the divot was in the right place. And then once I'm a little bit more comfortable, I can start to take away my external focus, start to take away my feedback, and start to transition that new skill to the golf course, because guess what, on the golf course you can't put a towel down. But what I've done is I've trained, I've got the right movement in, and then obviously I can just go ahead and execute that movement without the towel there. And the last thing that you have to do with your body, and this is exactly what I did with Owain, this was the game changer for him, transformed his whole game. You have to push away from the ground. So the forces that you generate from your body are three. They're rotational forces, they are lateral forces, and we call them vertical forces. Now, this was really key for Owain because he had the first two. He was missing the last one. And when we added it in, I say, massive changes. So when I set up the golf ball, look at my body shape. I am tilted or flexed forwards. I've got angle in my hips and my upper body is tilted over. Now, when Owain was going through the golf ball, what we saw from that face on is as he was turning through, he had maintained too much of that body shape. So he was still in this flexed forward position. What I wanted him to do is take this position, and as he went through the ball, push, extend, and actually move towards this little bit of a kind of extended position. Because watch what happens here. If I take my setup, if I remove my flex and work towards my extended position, that looks pretty strange. But if I did that with rotation, it looks like a perfect end position. So as we've got our rotation, we need to be making sure we have got this push away from the ground into this extended position. So let me show what that would look like, good versus bad. This is what we kind of saw Owain doing. Okay, I've made that a little bit worse, but you can see that body shape that we want to try and avoid. And then what we had him do was move very much into this different position at the end, where he was pushing through his body. I wanted him to feel like his hips were closer to the target than his chest, and his chest was facing up to the sky. And this is one of the big stumbling blocks of many golfers, because you think about what we said in point number 2, that's all about strike. Many golfers are desperately trying to improve strike. They're desperately trying to get the club to go more down because they believe that's going to help them, and it probably will. So it almost feels contradictory to move away from the ground on the way through, to kind of push up in this direction. But I always use this example, okay? My club head can be going down as the other end is going up. There is not a direct relationship between these two. Well, there is, but it's not, they don't move in the same direction. The golf club isn't moving like this in the golf swing, it's moving like this. So provided you have that shift, that's going to get you into your lead side, and then you can use that pressure into that lead side to push yourself out into that follow through position. Here's the drill I'd love you to do. I'd love you to take a setup. Mid-iron is perfect. And I'd love you to hit some shots where you find yourself in this end position with the club head lower than your head. Okay, let me show what that would look like. Yeah, probably a little bit higher than my head at one point, but it's finished not too bad. There's my extended body position. Club head is, well, if I cheat a little bit, lower than my head. That's a great little exercise, okay? So many golfers struggle because they don't use the body well enough. The arms start to go through and the club head starts to work up very, very quickly.